It's another edition of Nomad Capitalist, and today I'm going to share one entrepreneur's thoughts on why I'm against retirement, against the trend of the 28-hour work week, against why don't you live more and work less. I'm going to share my thoughts. Today I'm drinking this TWG Earl Grey Gentleman Tea, which is a great black tea with bergamot and a citrus aroma. I really like this one. As I always say, they're not a sponsor. I'm just a fan. And if it's your first time here, I'm Andrew Henderson, founder of Nomad Capitalist. We're a boutique consultant firm that helps 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally reduce their taxes and increase their freedom and just get more out of life. You can learn more at nomadcapitalist.com. We also host the biggest and best offshore conference called Nomad Capitalist Live. And it is with that introduction that I want to tell you why I am personally, I'm not going to judge you what you think. You're allowed to be different. But I personally, and the people that I associate with, are against retirement and against this trend of why don't we all work 3.5 days a week and the 20-hour work week. And really, I've always been against, as much as I've been associated with the digital nomad scene at some point, the idea of let me move to a place that's more affordable. Nothing against affordable. I live in some very affordable places, but against it so that I can work less. And so we got a couple comments recently from people when I was talking about the OECD, this kind of high-tax lobbying group where they don't pay taxes, and people were like, what's wrong with working 28 hours or less? Like, why do you want to spend your entire life working? Why don't you want to have more time for yourself? Like, what's wrong with taking time off? If you work here and you want to come and work in most of our positions at Nomad Capitalist, here's when we work, and depending on your role, there's a certain amount of flexibility. There's some roles that have that. There's some roles where you just have to be available at certain times because of what we do. If you are, higher up in the company, we work pretty hard and we work late sometimes, and we try and compensate people for that. But really, for me, what I want in my life, and this is partially my kind of Protestant work ethic and Protestant upbringing, but it's just who I am. But I think when you're an entrepreneur, you have to understand that you are in rarefied air. Not saying you're better than anybody else, because nothing that I'm saying here is that I think you should do what I'm doing. Let me just be very clear. I believe in optionality. I believe in not judgment. There's a part of me that it's very hard for me to understand, where if you have a talent and you have the ability to create a business that serves people, or you have the ability to work on a project or make investments or do whatever it is that you do that creates a positive impact on people, you should feel good about that, and you should want to do that as much as possible. I came across an article recently on CNBC from a 67-year-old who unretired, and he shared his biggest retirement challenge that no one talks about. Basically, he says in 2007, he was 52, he was forced to retire. He basically had an eggplant-sized tumor sitting on his pelvis, and he said in 98% of cases, he just wouldn't have made it. But basically, after 2 operations, he was able to recuperate, he got on crutches, he was able to walk again. And so all these years later, he decided to unretire and launch a mindset coaching company to help people achieve a more fulfilling retirement than he had. Because when he looked at this retirement, and when he started asking people, like, what are your challenges in retirement? What are the regrets? I miss doing work that I love. I don't think retiring is for me. I want to go back to whatever it is that I was doing. I felt passion for it. I'm not sure what to do with my time. I feel lost. I feel like I've lost my identity. I feel like I'm rejected in some ways. I don't know how I get that one. And so he kind of listed regrets and health issues, identity issues, all kinds of things that happen with retirement. If I wanted just to stop, especially the places that I live, right? I own homes that I don't have debt. I like to live very conservatively. I'm kind of security conscious person. My costs for living, depending on how luxurious, really aren't that high. I put together the numbers for living a pretty luxurious lifestyle, and it's actually not that high of a number. You could just kind of bankroll that off of investments very easily. And so, why don't I want to retire? Why don't I know that I ever want to retire? And why do I kind of look at people who, even if they're politicians, and certainly if they're in business, and certainly if they're entrepreneurs, they just keep going until they're 70, 80, 90 years old. For me, I can't really identify with why you would have this great gift and then just I'm going to do it 28 hours a week. Now, I've never been an employee, and I don't manage 90+% of the people who work on our company. We have people who certainly see my vision, but also understand that people want to have lives. I've never wanted to have a life. This is what I enjoy doing. And every time I try and be like, I'm going to try and like go and do some yoga. Like a couple of years ago, 5, 6 years ago, I got convinced to like, why don't you like take Fridays off, or like, why don't you do like Monday was like manicure, pedicure. I don't remember what I was doing, but it's just, okay, nothing wrong with like going and doing a little bit of self-care, and I do that, but it was like, take the whole day off and like don't even think about it. It's like, no, you don't understand. I want to think about it. I enjoy thinking about it. Since I've been 11 or 12 years old, I see instances of business ideas or ways to improve my business or ways to do whatever in just everyday life. You have a lot of people who are in the media, for example. They have opinions. They want to share their opinions with you. When something happens to their outlet, they find another outlet. I mean, look at the United States. Bill O'Reilly, for example, fired from Fox News, wants to have an outlet. Whether you agree with him, disagree with him, think he should have an outlet, think he shouldn't have an outlet. This is a guy, the guy could afford to retire. I know he had a bunch of lawsuits, but I mean, he could afford to retire. A lot of us could afford to retire, and certainly we could afford to retire if we went somewhere that, where things were more affordable. But we don't. And so what I find is one of the most valuable things is if you are wired the same way, you need to be surrounded by like-minded people. One of the most successful parts of our annual event, Nomad Capitalist Live, is people getting together. Because you know why? People who not only are self-starters and who have created wealth through a business or investments, that's rare enough. Okay, you can live around people, certain neighborhoods, you can live around obviously successful people, they may be high-level employees, they may be business people, even that's kind of hard. But when you add in the things of, I value personal freedom, I value less government, I value a certain lifestyle, right? It's hard to find that, and especially when you start thinking internationally. Most people are going to think like, oh, you're kind of nuts. So what's great about Nomad Capitalist Live when people come there, and this is not a pitch for Nomad Capitalist Live, but just it's like people love the networking because everyone's like them. I think the same thing applies to those of us who are entrepreneurs. Now we have, hashtag entrepreneurs, I call it today, where you have a lot of wantrepreneurs who I think probably the next time you have a recession, something that people a little bit younger than I haven't really seen in their adult lives, some of these folks just aren't going to make it. And I'm not rooting for that, as Elon Musk is. I'm not rooting for it. I want everyone to win. But I do realize that entrepreneurship, another comedian we mentioned, Jay Leno, he's like, being a comedian is almost like a sickness. It just happens to be profitable these days. But historically, it's kind of like a weird thing to have. I think the same way about entrepreneurship to a certain extent. I support anyone who wants to go out and start a business. We've had a few people who've worked at our company. They've gone out and they've started something, and I applaud them, and I'm supportive of that. I also realize that a lot of people who are going to leave a job are going to do that because there's such a great commitment. Certainly, you can lightning can strike once. It's not going to strike consistently. And so nothing wrong with starting a business, making a whack of cash for a year or two. Not sure that makes you, as a person, an entrepreneur. And I'm not saying it should. Because an entrepreneur is almost, it's almost like an affliction. It's something that's afflicted on you. It's like, you can't think of anything else, right? If you're Jerry Seinfeld, do you ever ask yourself, like, what if I could just kind of enjoy life and not be irritable and irascible and turn that into comedy? I mean, most people would say like, hey, I'd rather just chill out and not be like, why is the tray table on the plane like a little, I'd rather not see that. And so, doing something for 1 or 2 years, doesn't necessarily mean that like, in the same category, someone just can't stop. And so I think that, I wanted to kind of voice this. I think a lot of people that I talk to feel like their lives are chaotic. Or I talked to someone recently, said, people think I'm too demanding. I've known this person for 3 or 4 years. This person's a very nice, kind, caring person, but the people around them are too demanding. And when I plugged into like, well, who are you working with in your new company? They're like, oh, I hooked up with my old friends. Are your friends entrepreneurs? No, they have really no motivation at all. I'm like, okay, well, that's your first problem. Classic entrepreneur mistake. We've all, many of us have been there at some point where you like hook up with somebody, or you bring on the wrong vendor, or you cut someone into a deal and you shouldn't have. Nothing wrong with that. We learn that's the point of being an entrepreneur. And I think that for us, it's like, for me, it's the constant personal development. If I didn't have a business to use as a personal development vehicle, I think it'd be a lot more difficult to learn and grow as a person and to gain that kind of sense of accomplishment that then gets shared with everybody else. But you see these entrepreneurs who are being told they're demanding. They're being told, like, why are you always thinking? They're being told in some cases by their spouses, their boyfriends, their girlfriends, like, you don't care about me. I think that understanding the rarefied air is important. Understanding that there are people out there who are saying, I want to be unretired. I've heard these stories for a long time. The guy retires at 42, sells a company, can't help himself. Look at Mark Cuban from Shark Tank. Sold a company, thought he would never work again with his $6 million or whatever he had, bought the American Airlines all-you-can-fly ticket, and then realized, no, I want to start something else. I want to leave my mark. And so there's nothing wrong with saying, I value just enjoying life. You can leave your mark in other ways. And I applaud someone who says, you know what, I have all I need. I'm just going to go and do charity. For me, I think it's easier, just my personality, to say, all right, where's the need? Let me financially support that and let me care about it and let me maybe give someone advice rather than being out there in the trenches doing it. But if you want to do that and you're in Bali and you're, saving, dogs, or saving cats, or whatever, fine, that's great. But, having some kind of purpose in life, which if you got there by business, is probably business. I want to kind of put this out there that people feel a comfort that someone who doesn't understand the affliction, doesn't understand the need to continue to grow, develop, build, learn, improve, doesn't get you down. And that might mean for some people that you have a relationship that isn't the right relationship because it's not supportive of what you are. And that's why you see a lot of these comedians, they get married at 50 years old because it takes them that long. I happen to think that a lot of these problems can be solved geographically. There's probably people around the world who are more open to and more interested in the fact that you're an entrepreneur. I certainly found that in Asia and parts of Europe when I was in my 20s, and people in the US are like, that's weird, back before entrepreneurship became cool. Certainly wasn't weird, certainly in Asia. People respected that a lot. And so if you don't want to retire, if you don't want to stop, this is why I don't want to do it. And I think it's worth having a discussion. Because so many of us are faced with, as I see all the time, people who are going to tell you there's something wrong. I think embracing it, embracing the need to work, pushing back. If someone else wants to work 28 hours a week and they're a freelancer, I support that. I don't necessarily know that I support the person who said, like, I want to work at home so I can have 2 or 3 jobs. And then, am I really doing what I'm promising to do? I'm not so sure about that, unless it's totally honest and upfront, in which case you absolutely are. But if it's like, I'm going to pretend I only have one job with each person and pretend they're getting my effort and then kind of half-heartedly put in effort with each one, no, I don't think it's ethical. But the culture is going against wanting to put in. Everything's about mental health. I think, and there was a great presentation at this year's the EntreLeadership Summit, put out by Dave Ramsey, and they talked about 6 kinds of wisdom. 2 kinds of wisdom you have, which you're great at, you'll never burn out, you can do it all the time. 2 kinds you're good at, you can go and you don't like it, but okay, you can do a certain amount. And there's 2 kinds you're just terrible at and you just burn out right away. If you're in business, if you're a founder, you're going to have those things where you can just work, and you don't share this with a lot of other people, and that's okay. But embracing that we're different than everyone, where it's like, I gotta have mental health first. My mental health is supported by having those levels of wisdom that build the business. That supports, not takes away from. So I want to say, don't let the changing society of mental health, work-life balance, you can have those things through your business, and I think it's okay to rely on a smaller community of people who support that.